believe in life on other planets.
Dr. Edgar Mitchell says
there is a worldwide conspiracy to cover up.
Edgar Mitchell est né à Roswell.
Edgar Mitchell is hitting the limelight.
Dr. Mitchell, 77 years old, was on a radio interview in Birmingham, England.
I mean, you realize this is the story of the century. I mean, that's better than a little bit of water on Mars.
The UFO phenomenon is real.
Whoa!
former NASA astronaut Edgar Mitchell talking to the completely overwhelmed and astonished Nick Margerison on a little-known British station, Kerrang Radio.
There's not much question at all, but there's life throughout the universe. We're not alone in the universe at all. It is a real phenomenon.
Astronaut Dr. Edgar Mitchell was on a radio show over in England, and he says that for 6 decades the government's been covering up the fact that aliens do exist.
Et pour cause, les extraterrestres ne sont plus sur la Lune, mais ici, sur Terre, et depuis longtemps.
A group of space enthusiasts are pushing President Obama to release government documents on possible close encounters with aliens and UFOs. Jim Acosta has the story.
To believers in UFOs, the truth isn't out there, it's in there. So they're calling on President Obama to end what they insist is a government cover-up of the existence of extraterrestrials.
Will you release these records? Will you release all documents?
Documents they claim exist and prove there is life in outer space. President Obama is awfully busy these days.
I know
he has time for this?
Well, I would say the fact that we are not alone in the universe is one of the more important aspects of our time.
Former Apollo astronaut Edgar Mitchell, the 6th man to walk on the moon, told the National Press Club he's convinced.
But there isn't convincing proof that's going to convince the entire world at this point.
That is correct. That is what
As for John Podesta, he's still sticking to his belief that the government knows more than it's telling about UFOs. He released a statement saying the government should open the files and the American people can handle the truth.
For years, the U.S. government has had a standing policy. It would neither confirm nor deny the existence of UFOs. Their non-cooperation has been interpreted by many ufologists as evidence of a government conspiracy to cover up UFO sightings. Now, Sightings has uncovered information that provides another explanation for their silence. Many UFO sightings may actually be top-secret military aircraft the government doesn't want you to know about.
When I first saw the UFO, it was directly overhead, moving incredibly slowly. The shape of it was half a triangle.
And all of a sudden, over at the hill, this enormous pattern of lights emerges.
I was just in awe of what I'd seen because I didn't know what it was and I'd never seen anything like it.
Holy cow! There's no question that there have been sightings by military devices in space. And that gets us right to the UFO question. Are we dealing with a cosmic Watergate? Which I maintain that we are.
What the hell was that?
I don't know.
It was neat. It was like leaving stuff behind it, wasn't it?
For the past 25 years, the United States government, especially the Air Force, has been telling us these things don't exist.
I feel that there's been so much controversy about cover-ups and UFO phenomena and everything that goes on, and I think that someone needs to point out that a lot of it is just hogwash.
If anybody says the United States government is not withholding information about flying saucers, simply isn't telling the truth, or they're totally ignorant one way or the other.
Our most recent investigation has concentrated on a series of sightings in the western United States. Sightings has learned that many UFOs spotted in California and Nevada may actually be highly classified military experiments called black projects. Sources familiar with these black projects, many of whom wish to remain anonymous, have told us that the military is now experimenting with aerospace technology beyond our wildest dreams.
The objects we're talking about are zipping around and doing hard-angled turns, acute-angled turns. In order to do that, it must be controlling gravity. And therefore, what you're talking about is a spacecraft, not an aircraft.
I think you have to be careful not to confuse what's mysterious with what is virtually supernatural. Certainly some of these things are going to look very strange. They're very unlike aircraft with which people are familiar.
Well, certainly the history of the flying saucer phenomena suggests that in the past, classified programs resulted in a lot of reports of flying saucers. And if you see all of the instances where conventional aircraft have been misinterpreted as flying saucers, it's quite easy to understand how unconventional aircraft could receive a similar misinterpretation.
In the Nevada desert, we have things that would make George Lucas envious. We have things out there that are literally out of this world.
Most aeronautical black projects reportedly operate out of this test site located at Groom Lake in Nevada. This installation is also known as Area 51, or Dreamland. The government denies the very existence of Area 51, but these photographs do prove there is an installation at Groom Lake.
They have a hangar near the south end of the ramp that appears to have doors that are almost 200 feet tall, 400 feet wide. You can put anything in there. One of the problems associated with Groom Lake is the fact that it is a place that does not officially exist.
This federal official insisted on hiding his identity.
Area 51 is the most tightly secured installation in this country. It's guarded both over the air and on the ground by elite Air Force security police and Department of Energy special response teams. They're heavily armed, and their total mission is to keep people off of this installation.
It's an ideal place for top secret, highly classified military projects, to refine them, to take them to the next level. This is the place. You have deep, deep desert valleys, high mountain ranges to camouflage and mask these things when they fly. The military is the top dog here in Nevada, no doubt about it. They run the show.
If someone came to me and said there's just absolutely nothing that secret, and they decided they were going to hike into Area 51, I think that could be the biggest and perhaps the last mistake they are going to make in their life.
Are these people still locked into a Cold War mentality? Is that the point here? Or are they really hiding something that's totally alien? Is this otherworldly technology that's being applied to Air Force black projects?
One of the most recent black projects to be leaked to the media has been dubbed Aurora. The few facts revealed so far about Aurora's speed and maneuverability are tantalizing. Rumors about Aurora first started after thousands of people in Southern California reported feeling earthquakes. Seismologists found that the tremors were not earthquakes, but were caused by sonic booms. The booms were the first hard evidence that high-speed, unidentified aircraft were operating over the western United States.
We really can't tell what's moving. The only thing we see is a sonic boom, and that's telling us that something is moving faster than the speed of sound. So actually, we can't even tell it's an airplane.
The sonic booms were tracked and found to be heading toward Nevada. At the same time, witnesses described an increasing number of UFOs that defied the laws of aerodynamics. If they are top-secret military aircraft, where is this new technology coming from?
The technology is incredible. A Mach 6 airplane, unmanned aerial vehicle performing these incredibly banked high-speed turns. It boggles the mind. Yeah, I think it could possibly be something otherworldly or at least borrowed alien technology. I don't put that beyond the realm.
Top-secret testing of experimental aircraft does provide a compelling explanation for many UFO sightings. But what about sightings which occur in remote areas far from military bases, or sightings in which eyewitnesses claim personal contact? Further investigation is needed to provide a more complete answer to the UFO question.
The most controversial subject we investigate on sightings is alien abduction. More and more seemingly credible people are coming forward, claiming that they've been abducted, probed, and manipulated by aliens. And now there's a new pattern developing. Supposed abductees are returning from their experiences with a cautionary message for us all.
There's a new, frightening chapter in the abduction story. Many abductees are claiming that their alien captors sent them home with apocalyptic predictions about life on Earth. It's a terrifying conclusion to an already horrible ordeal.
I'm on my back on the bed, and she's at the foot of my bed, and she's doing something to me.
We had this flashback of being on this table, being surrounded by these beings.
I don't know what she was doing. She had some sort of an instrument in her hand.
Little gray guys, big dark eyes, and one of them's putting a needle in my neck.
Until recently, the story would end there. But now abductees are returning with more than horror stories. They feel they are intergalactic messengers who must deliver dire predictions. This new mission intrigues Harvard professor John Mack. This Pulitzer Prize-winning psychiatrist at Cambridge Hospital is now treating people he calls experiencers. In his new book, Abduction, Mack presents 13 case histories.
I thought this is crazy. I mean, I thought this is not possible. I'd seen many, many cases and worked for 2 years before I said, look, there's a mystery here. I can't explain this. There's something like what they're saying seems to be happening to them.
You actually have seen them in your room in bright sun daylight. What did you see?
Currently working with over 100 patients, Dr. Mack's clinical approach gives abductees a chance to talk openly about their experiences.
I would have experiences that were so real, that were so lucid, they were every bit as real as me talking to you now, and yet I would dismiss them because they were so out of context.
Joe is a successful businessman from Massachusetts who's had abduction memories since early childhood. He kept these experiences to himself until hearing about Dr. Mack's study. His abduction history is outlined in Mack's book. It's a detailed chronicle of otherworldly control and painful medical experimentation.
They put something up my nose, and it was very disarming. And yet there's that sense of almost a split self, because there's a part of me that's terrified and doesn't understand, and yet there's this other part of me that they've already explained the procedure to and why.
Over time, Joe's abduction experiences have changed. In an extraterrestrial version of the Stockholm Syndrome, he has less fear and has begun identifying with his captors.
Once they begin to come to terms with their terror of the trauma, the experience tends to transform. They feel they're somehow connected with these beings, and they experience the beings themselves as closer to the source, which is a term they use very often, or home.
It was the most profound experience of my life.
But that kind of profound transformation does not happen in every case.
The first being that I ever saw consciously in my entire life was sitting right here.
Diane, a software test engineer, is also a patient of Dr. Mack's. She's documenting her encounters with these watercolor pictures.
This picture was in the fall of '92. It took place here in the house, and I woke up, started to pivot around, found I couldn't move, and something released, and I said I could move. I scanned the room, just about to give up, and I see a small gray female being sitting there just waiting for me to spot her. And then she, I don't know whether she flew or what, but she sure came across the bed fast, right up to my face, and stared right like this.
Although the experiences don't fit our notions of reality, there's no reason to believe that they're not telling the truth, or that something occurred to them that is real and they're telling it truthfully.
To corroborate these personal beliefs, Dr. Mack searches for parallels among abduction stories. The most common thread, and ironically the most extraordinary, involves reproductive experiments.
Sperm samples taken from the men by a cup put over the penis, some kind of vibratory energy that causes an ejaculation. Eggs taken from the women. Something is done between the egg and the sperm, which may be reimplanted in the woman in a subsequent abduction. Then that will be taken, the fetus will be taken from them at a later time. That's their experience.
I flew out the window like a sucking, vacuumed out feeling with all the air pushed out of me. I ended up on a craft, laying down on a table, and next thing I know, I see a child. One of those ugly little gray things is holding a child up, and I said, no, that didn't come out of me. At the end of that experience, I blacked out and came to standing on this platform, and I was not home anymore. I was somewhere else. I don't know where this was. I felt like I was on a ship.
every emotion is so appropriate to a real experience. Dreams don't operate like that. Fantasy isn't like that. Trauma displaced from some of the source isn't like that. It isn't just a traumatic story. It's a complicated, consistent narrative that operates clinically altogether like a real experience.
The complicated, consistent narrative Dr. Mack's patients describe always has a beginning, middle, and most recently, the same exact ending. Before they are returned home, the abductees are warned about an impending apocalypse, unless all people on Earth drastically change their way of thinking.
We are told that the human experience, the human race, as we have known it, is becoming, or soon to be, non-viable, not extinct. It can't survive. My own sense of it, and this is purely speculative, is that we are also being given a choice to change our ways. In other words, we were here to shepherd or steward the earth, or be responsible for a higher consciousness, and what we've become so far from the Creator, so distant from the source, that we have treated the earth like it was our property, and we are apparently a malignancy at a cosmic level now.
The message is, wake up, grow up. The sandbox that you're littering is not your own. That you are not alone. That you don't need to feel the sense of isolation and separation that you have felt. That you're part of a bigger community.
According to a recent Roper poll, 1 in 50 American adults exhibits at least 4 out of the 5 most common symptoms reported by alien abductees. That's a staggering statistic, because it seems to indicate that 2% of our adult population is experiencing something for which no one has a conclusive explanation.
The variety of witnesses of UFOs is endless. They include military personnel from the Air Force, Navy, and Marine Corps, radar specialists, aeronautical engineers, airport traffic controllers, astronomers, FBI agents, state, county, and city police, pilots and crews from American, United, Eastern, Pan American, Northwest, Western, and TWA were also on the list of witnesses. Millions in the United Kingdom, France, Australia, South America, Mexico, and other nations around the world have seen UFOs. For 18 years, the late Dr. J. Allen Hynek headed up the Air Force investigation into UFOs, called Project Blue Book, and was acknowledged to be the world's foremost authority on UFOs. After amassing a computer bank of over 63,000 sightings, he states,
"The UFO phenomenon is truly a phenomenon of our times. It is an extremely puzzling one and calls forth a wide spectrum of opinions. No matter what one may think about UFOs, no matter what one may believe about them, whether it is all nonsense or whether they represent something very, very real, 3 facts stand out, 3 facts which no one can deny. The first is that UFO reports exist. Secondly, that UFO reports come from all over the world. And the third is that many are made by highly responsible people, often scientifically trained. We scientists have no positive proof yet of the origin or even of the reality of these strange reported craft, but we do know that the reports themselves are very real. To find the answer to this magnificent scientific puzzle, the UFO phenomenon, we need to approach it with a truly open mind so we can explore all possible avenues of explanation.
and sired children from them. For the past 1,500 years, most scholars, including evangelical scholars,
God came into the daughters of men, and they bore children to them. Those were the mighty men who were of old, men of renown. Genesis 6:3 and 4.
The word Nephilim comes from the Hebrew verb nephal, the fallen ones. They are the hybrid offspring of the Benaiah Elohim, the sons of God. It's a technical term, Hebrew term, used of angels. And these fallen angels cohabited with human women and produced a hybrid offspring. It was part of Satan's strategy. This view of Genesis chapter 6 and all of that is not free of controversy today. However, that is the view that was embraced by the ancient Hebrew sages. That is the view that is substantiated by the ancient rabbinical writings. That is the view that was accepted by the early church. When the Hebrew scriptures were translated into Greek, the language is even more specific. And so this idea that they were somehow just a leadership or sons of Adam or something were contrived arguments that emerged in the 5th century, so-called lines of Seth idea. In the 5th century, so-called lines of Seth idea. And that's still taught in many seminaries. The problem with it, it's not biblical. Because in the New Testament, it even confirms this. Both Peter and Jude make reference to this, clearly talking about these angels that went after strange flesh, that abandoned their previous clothing. They disrobed from their previous existence to indulge in this, what should I call it, chicanery.
This event was echoed in mythologies everywhere as the age of the Titans and demigods, the same way that the UFO phenomenon is echoed in our fiction.
When we study the passage in Genesis 6, we'll notice that one of the distinctives of Noah was that his genealogy was unblemished. And the Hebrew word there is tamim, which is used of physical defects. In other words, one of the reasons that Noah was picked, probably many, but one was that one of his distinctives was that his genealogy wasn't contaminated by these goings-on. It would appear that the strategy of Satan was to introduce this as a means of corrupting the human line to preclude God's plan of redemption through the Messiah, which had to be a kinsman of Adam.
The parable of Jesus that I count as foundational for Satan and evil is the one where Jesus says the kingdom of heaven is like a man who owned a field and sowed good seed in it, had his servants sow good seed in it, and then by night an enemy came and sowed weeds in the field and then went away.
Well, the Nephilim in the book of Genesis, of course, are the hybrid offspring of these strange interludes between the fallen angels and the daughters of man, of Adam. And so they're hybrids. And they are very prominent in the early chapters of Genesis, but they're also, the scripture says, occurred after that to some extent. Right. But they're hybrids. As we study the passages in the Bible that describe what we call the end times, it's interesting that one of the characteristics, it shows up in Daniel 2, is that it says they will mingle themselves with the seed of men.
The prophetic dream of Nebuchadnezzar gives us an astonishing detail concerning end times. Scripture indicates that the last government of earth will be a hybrid government, iron mixed with clay.
And where you saw iron mixed with miry clay, they shall mingle themselves with the seed of men, but they shall not adhere to one another, even as iron is not mixed with clay. Daniel 2:43.
Now, in order for them to mingle with the seed of men, the they have to be something other than the seed of men. So it's just a hint, but it's a profound hint that somehow in the end times there's going to be again some kind of commingling, some kind of intrusion into the genetic DNA makeup of people that's going to be a contaminant that will be part of the end times. And that's why there's so much scholastic interest in this UFO business, in the abduction narratives and reports, and we may very well be being plunged into a period of time about which the Bible says more than it does about any other period of time in history, including the time of the Gospels, when Jesus walked the shores of Galilee.
When people are abducted, as part of the procedures, they will sometimes be taken into a room and they will see containers. And in each container there's liquid, and in the middle of the liquid there's a tiny fetus floating. Later they'll be shown babies. Small, odd-looking babies, as they will report. Their babies don't look right. Physically they're phlegmatic, they look like they're sick, they're not bouncing babies that are grasping and gurgling, they're silent. They almost look like they're half dead. They also have unusual features. People say they look like they're sort of half human, half alien. They're odd looking, yet they look sort of human. My colleague Bud Hopkins says that they called them hybrids originally, and that's a name that's stuck. They then will have to hold the baby, have some sort of physical contact with the baby, put their hand on the baby's stomach, hold the baby close to their skin. There must be skin-on-skin contact. Oftentimes, when the baby's a little bit older, they're required to feed the baby. Sometimes they'll be brought into a room, this is now men and women, where there will be what looks like 2-year-olds, 3-year-olds, 1.5-year-olds walking around. And they're required to play with them, have contact with them, and we see these toddlers when they're 4 years old, 5, 7 years old, 9 years old. They're already children, young children at that point. People describe them as adolescents. They describe them as young adults. They describe them as adults. And they don't describe them as older adults so much. By the time we see them as adolescents, we see them involved with the abduction phenomenon. Performing tasks, they have jobs to do. They're part of the world of abductions. Going about their business, doing what's required of them.
Let's remember that when Jesus briefed 4 disciples in his confidential briefing on his second coming, he opened his discussion and he closed his discussion with the urgent admonition, let no man deceive you. We need to understand that the characteristic of the period that we're being plunged into is one of deceit, one of very clever misguidance by the enemy. We do have an enemy. He's very knowledgeable, very resourceful. And we are moving into open spiritual warfare. We're used to conflicts in countries about politics, different views. Today, there's a fundamental war going on in worldviews.
Sometimes abductees will be brought into a room and their attention will be directed at a screen-like device. And the person will hear a voice in their mind saying, can you tell the difference between us and you? Now, depending on who the person is, they will say, what do you mean the difference between us and you? Everybody is the same. And they'll hear in their head, see, isn't that wonderful? Isn't that beautiful? Pretty soon in the future, we will all be together. You won't be able to tell the difference, and it will be wonderful. Some will be able to tell the difference. Some will say, well, yes, this one here looks like you, and this one here looks like us. At that point, they will say, well, you know, there will be a difference, but we will all be together, and you're one of the lucky ones. You can tell the difference. Most people won't be able to. The key fact here is that they're all saying, in the future, we'll all be together.
As you follow the progress through the centuries and you see how the power structures have changed, it has been going more and more towards an economical power structure to control the world with money. And that seems to be where it's going. More and more we're looking towards a world bank, one world system, one world currency. I mean, already Europe has joined its currency together. North Americans are thinking the same way. So this is really the work of Satan. This is his way of getting command and control over the entire world.
As we deal with the end-time scenario in the Bible, one of the dominant players is a world leader. In fact, it's 2 guys working together, but it's a world leader that is going to successfully unite the world into a one-world religion. He's going to exalt himself above all that is called God. That includes Allah as well as the Jews and the Christians. He somehow is going to deceive the whole world. He's the most popular guy that's ever come along. There are experts that have studied the Scripture that believe that he could very well have an alien connection or even be one himself. The involvement of these alien entities may be a far bigger factor in the climax that the Bible portrays than most classical scholars have really been sensitive to.
7, go ahead. Yes, sir. I don't know what it was, but it just overflew like a couple of 100 feet above us. It was like I don't know if it was a rocket or whatever, but incredibly fast, opposite direction.
In the opposite direction?
Yes, sir. And the time was 2107. It was too fast to be an airplane.
Okay, thank you. Houston 986 Boston Center. Center maintain flight level 18. Okay, thank you. Houston 986 Boston Center. Center maintain flight level 180.
Down to 180, yes, sir. 986.
Houston 986. You see anything like a missile in your area, perhaps off to your right?
Take a good look, but I don't think, if it's going that fast, I probably won't get a chance. We just saw a split there go by a little bit.
We found a phenomenon that is global, that is random, that is intergenerational, that happens in great frequency, something we never expected to see, that is goal-directed, that is done clandestinely, secretly, and that has as its goal ultimately an integration into the society on their terms, not on our terms. And I think that there's not a lot we can do about it, unfortunately.
You know, it's interesting that in the book of Genesis, the very first prediction of Jesus Christ is when God declares war on Satan, Genesis chapter 3, and he speaks that the ultimate redemption of man will come from the seed of a woman. And there's even a hint of the virgin birth. But that phrase is actually a contradiction in biology as well as grammar, but that's the term used. But most people overlook in that very verse, he also speaks of the seed of the serpent. And so it's clear that Satan has a role in this final climax that we're all heading to.
What we think is going on here, because eggs are taken and sperm is taken, that they are joined together in vitro. They are joined together outside, and at that point, either DNA is added or the fertilized egg is altered in some way. And when that happens, we posited that you're going to get a bell-shaped curve, that some are going to look really alien, some are going to look really human, and most are going to be in the middle. What we've also learned is that what they then do is take the DNA from one of these hybrid children and inject that into the embryo, and then you get a skewed bell-shaped curve where some of them look alien, a lot look in the middle, and a lot more look a lot more human. Then you take DNA from that generation and do the same thing, and you keep doing it over and over and over again until pretty soon you get hybrids that look very human. There's slight differences, but very human. And that is in fact what we have been seeing, much to our amazement and chagrin.
But in contrast to stories from the ancient world which produced giants, sexual contact between aliens and humans is absent. Perhaps this time a different strategy is at hand.
I now believe that this is a kind of integration program into the society. As a program, it is being done for a reason. It is goal-directed, and it had a beginning, a middle, and it's got an end. They are doing this for a reason. That's critically important to understand. Not only that, this is clandestine. It is secret, and it is secret for a reason. I've been involved with studying UFOs and abductions for over 40 years, and it was always kind of thrilling and exciting. Now it's depressing and fearful, and it's not something that I enjoy hearing. As an academic, you're required to examine that data to see whether it's true or not, and if it is true, to go where the evidence leads you, even though you might kick and scream while en route. And I have kicked and screamed en route. But as an honest academic, you're required to do that. And as a historian, you're required to do that especially. And that is where it has led me. And it has led me into areas that I don't want to go. Not only that, it's embarrassing to talk about this. I understand how completely insane it sounds. I am fully aware of my words, of what I'm saying, and the effect that this has on people. Oh, this is just nuts. And I understand that. But in order to be academically honest, I must say it nonetheless, even though it puts me in a very bad position. I just wish that other people in the scientific community would at least learn a methodology of studying this phenomenon. They haven't done that, and it's not going to happen, from what I can tell. I mean, I can't tell the future, but the chances of that happening are very remote now, because we have looked at every conceivable kind of psychological explanation, and none of them.
Lo estamos viendo en el FLIR. Es un objeto luminoso. Lleva rumbo contrario a nosotros, pero no nos deja. Está 2 millas atrás de nosotros.
I am waiting for the coming of Christ. I believe he is coming in ships, right? And that he will come and collect us.
For the Lord himself will descend from heaven with a shout, with the voice of the archangel, and with the trumpet of God. And the dead in Christ will rise first. Then we who are alive and remain will be caught up with them in the clouds to meet the Lord in the air. And so we shall always be with the Lord. Therefore comfort one another with these words. 1 Thessalonians 4:16 and 17.
This prophesied collecting event could be understood as a mass abduction. Satan and his chosen hybrid may villainize the coming Messiah and deceive the world they rule by misrepresenting him. Concerning the world leader, Scripture states,
Some of the passages that puzzle me the most in the Scripture, it describes that the whole world is going to go to war against God. Now, I can understand the world rejecting God, I can understand the world not believing God, but somehow it's always been hard for me to visualize the world mustering its resources to go to war against God. And yet that's clearly what it says in Psalm 2 and a number of other places. But you know, suddenly I can begin to understand how this might happen, because there are many people that believe that there are already aliens among us conspiring with the government, whatever, and they visualize these as being the good guys. They're here to help us. They're here to give us advanced technology. There are people that really have this kind of attitude.
One of the other procedures that people describe is a certain kind of staring procedure, where a person will say that they're being looked at, and I'll say, well, what do you mean being looked at? Do you mean they're just looking you over, you know? I'll say, no, he's looking at me very closely. And I say, well, where is he looking? Is he looking? These are purposely misleading questions. Is he looking at your abdomen? Is he looking at your stomach? Is he looking at your knees? You know, where's he looking? No, he's looking at my face. I say, well, is he looking at, you mean your chin? He's looking at your chin? No, he's looking at my eyes. And I'll say, well, how far away is he from you? Oh, his forehead is touching mine. I'll say, well, can you close your eyes? No. Can you look away? No. And they're being stared at a distance of maybe an inch, 2 inches, sometimes forehead touching forehead. What this is some sort of neural engagement. And people can see and imagine things that are going on in their brain practically. They can almost understand which neurons are being innervated as they're hooking into the optic nerve and using that as a conduit to go into other neural pathways and innervate specific anatomical sites within the brain. People see images in their mind when this happens. They will see images of horrible events, catastrophic events happening, the earth breaking in two, nuclear war, a meteor hitting. In this imaging that they're going through, they will have a job to do or tasks to do. Now, the reason I could think this is because there were other kind of neurological events that were happening to them that they kept describing these, where they would have to sit at a council and perform certain tasks almost electronically, or have to do something with their eyes. They would have to look at a specific situation and change it with their eyes, or there were all sorts of things that they had to do, all of which had something to do with neurology. Their eyes, or there were all sorts of things that they had to do, all of which had something to do with neurology.
I can begin to see a scenario which we sometimes call good cop, bad cop kind of thing, where Satan's emissaries pose to be our friends to help prepare us for the bad guys who are coming. And I can visualize the whole world being deceived in taking up arms against God, thinking that they're being led by their friends who are actually Satan's emissaries.
Eventually, they began to talk about how in the future they would have these certain tasks to perform, and they had to make sure that they performed these correctly. And we began to realize that from the time they were children all the way up through adults, they were being trained over and over again to obey eventually the signal when it was given for them to do certain tasks that they had to perform in the future.
they appear to have the ability to materialize and dematerialize without a trace. One of the great mysteries of the UFOs isn't seeing them, is trying to figure out where are they when you don't see them. Some people say, well, they're from another galaxy. Most physicists will debunk that for lots of reasons. They seem to pose that way, but for lots of, if they came, if there are that many coming from another galaxy, you'd think you'd sense the traffic. We'll come to that with some more reasonable explanations, and you're going to discover the two top researchers in the last century, really, is Jacques Vallée, France, and J. Allen Hynek, the American. Now, J. Allen Hynek was head of astronomy at Cornell, and he set out to debunk this nonsense about UFOs, and he became one of the most ardent, competent, balanced researchers in the trade. J. Allen Hynek, he died a few years ago. Both of these respected researchers came to the conclusion that they're not intergalactic for lots of physics. There are a lot of physics rebuttals to that conjecture. They both argued that these things are demonic. Their term. They've written many, many books. You can check them out. These are not religious people. They're not people with any kind of personal agenda. But they came to the conclusion that these things, on the one hand, and by the way, we take for granted that we strip away the nonsense and the hoaxes, set that aside. There's tens of thousands of files you have to wallow through. When you cut through all that, there's still a core group, a substantial core group of real events that need explanation. And so on the one hand, they exhibit physical properties on the one hand. On the other hand, they also violate all physical laws. And so the conclusion that both J. Allen Hynek and Jacques Vallée and others have come to is that they're hyperdimensional, that somehow they come from another dimension periodically. But both of them came to the conclusion that these creatures are hyperdimensional. They're not from some other galaxy. They also both concluded they're hostile because they pretend to be something they're not.
That you consider the UFO phenomenon an extra-dimensional or supernatural event as opposed to an extraterrestrial event. I'm definitely more in that camp. I believe they're interdimensional, and of course I believe that they're the manifestation of fallen angels, whose literally their wings were clipped.
people in Africa saw a meteor.
And then a door opened, and this little man got out. He had on a black suit.
62 children came into contact with what they say were alien creatures.
But it was the eyes that was frightening.
But they believed the aliens had an ominous message.
I think it's about something different happened. I thought was maybe the war is going to end. To know that we're actually making harm on this world. And I don't think but just popped up in the head. It's just that the face with the eyes, they look horrible.
What they claim to be. They have
個學徒。
I don't mean to interrupt you, but doesn't this make sense? I mean, if in fact there are extraterrestrials and they're buzzing our planet, why wouldn't we want to take steps to defend ourselves from them should they turn hostile?
As a military strategist, as a person who worked on the MX missile, which I did later, he said you will find that there is going to be a spin to find some enemy against whom we have to build space-based weapons, and now we should expect the spin, because he said part of the formula for the intelligence community is if they might have a weapon, then we have to consider that they do have these weapons. So now they do have these weapons, so now we have to build these weapon systems, and that's the formula, except that it's all based on a lie.
Hear that? There's something down there, and it's moving.
7 should be.
We've reconstructed another training routine from the notes Ali made immediately afterwards. She had to stare fixedly into someone's eyes for over an hour. She even found herself hallucinating.
The staring routines were supposed to make you feel comfortable being with other people, just looking at them. The more you looked at someone, sometimes they changed shape. They grew scales, became like a lizard, or changed from negatives to positives. It was a really strange experience.
Maybe we could share one. You know, they'll be doubling up the rate this city's inhabitants are losing their minds.
This city just showed you that it's full of people ready to believe in good.
Until their spirit breaks completely. Until they get a good look at the real Harvey Dent. Huh? And all the heroic things he's done. You didn't think I'd risk losing the battle for Gotham's soul in a fist fight with you. Oh, you need an ace in the hole. Mine's Harvey.
What did you do?
I took Gotham's White Knight and I brought him down to our level. It wasn't hard. See, madness, as you know, is like gravity. All it takes is a little push.
All hail President K!
I don't understand why we have to build a ray gun to aim at a planet I never even heard of.
Don't blame me. I voted for Kodos.
Go!
Robotic human surrogates combine the durability of a machine with the grace and beauty of the human body. With most people living their lives through their surrogate selves, our world has become a safer place. Take a seat in your STEM chair, and just with the power of your mind, you can control your surrogate and send it out into the real world. You can live your life without limitations. You see what they see, feel what they feel, and become anyone you want to be from the comfort and safety of your own home.
Welcome back to the NutriMedical Report with Freeman. And of course, Freeman, you're very popular when you come on the program. We have you on at least twice a month because some of the perspectives you have really do transform people's way of looking at the world. And the worldview is part of the solution. If you don't have a transformation of your worldview, you can't figure out what is happening and why. Please tell us more about all these blue things.
Well, people need to catch up, definitely. They think that they're still living in the 1940s, and in some ways that's the truth. You know, we are moving into what I think is another world war.
What I've been looking at is the blue beam, blue brain, blue book connection. And what we've got going on right now, and Avatar is a perfect example of this in the media mainstream, the new movie, which has to do with mind uploading technology and cloning.
Right, and of course Ray Kurzweil, one of the leading transhumanists, lots of different patents, by the way. This is a very smart man. Anti-aging is coming, and of course one of the things that he's pushing is the idea that you can translate your human consciousness and then put it literally as an avatar into another being, whether it's transhuman, meaning like a hybrid of these humanoids from this planet Pandora with human DNA, or a human transhuman where they've uploaded genes from various animals. And we're on the verge of this. I mean, the fact is, and in secret and underground facilities around the world, transhumans exist today. Not in some movie studio in a lot in Los Angeles or one of the other studio lots up in Burbank, but in actual reality.
And when you take the name of the creatures that they had on the planet Pandora, the Na'vi, and you bring that over to the Tarot, into the Kabbalistic explanations, Na'vi equals death lovers. And that's what it would be in a Tarot sense, Na'vi, which goes to 6 and 13, which takes you 6 being the Christ number and 13 the goddess. So we're back to a hermaphroditic symbol and just the simple name of the Na'vi race that they are cloning.
This is interesting. It's coming out at the same time as the Green Agenda of Copenhagen, just weeks before, and the announcement of this movie, which is talking about these evil, vile humans that want this precious mineral below this sacred tree in their forest of their world Pandora. So give us some more insight, please.
Okay, well, in the concept of the mind uploading or mind transferring technology, this is something MIT's been working on, and one that I've been following is Henry Markram, who runs the Blue Brain Project in Switzerland. Now, as he was discussing, and I found it curious that his technology failed him as he was giving his lecture, but the Blue Brain Project is trying to recreate a rat brain, which brings me back to Battlefield Earth with John Travolta and L. Ron Hubbard. But they need 500 petabytes. Now, a petabyte is 1,000 terabytes, so we're looking at 1,000,000 megabytes. To 500 petabytes to be able to create a rat brain, and then hopefully a human brain as they move up the spectrum. Well, the thing is that Henry Markram, with his Blue Brain Project, is consistently saying that he needs $1 billion to get the computer technology to be able to do this. But when we realized that CERN had created this fiber optic direct line called the grid, and the grid has coupled 200,000 computers together to make a new World Wide Web, as it were, although not for public consumption.
You're talking about the supernet. In other words, we're not talking about the World Wide Web the public knows about. We're talking about the grid, which is 100,000 megabytes or a terabyte per second transfer rates through the supergrids, through fiber optic networks laid around the world.
And so when we find out that the grid was moving from petabytes to exabytes, now exabytes, when you realize how large this is, it's 1 quintillion bytes. And so basically all the printed material in the world would only take up 5 exabytes, or 5 billion gigabytes. And we're seeing the grid move to this level, to 5 billion gigabyte spectrum. That just opens the door for AI technology and the creation of the human brains and mind transferring technology. So when many people aren't watching is CERN with the grid.
They can create a sort of simulation of mind transfer, but here I'm going to give some information that's, if you want to call it spiritually or otherwise classified. And you mentioned this before the show. The Vatican has agreed to the idea with CERN to look for what's called the astral or the spirit particle. This is beyond the Higgs boson, which is the God particle. And they know that, for example, the higher dimensional planes are real worlds. In other words, above the dimensional planes of the fifth dimension, there are 6, 7, right up to the 7 dimensions of spirituality. That is what we call the dimensions of negentropy, or the dimensions of order. In other words, the spirit dimensions literally imprint and create order within the dimensions of chaos that we exist in, our physical bodies here, the 5 lower dimensions. And if they can get the technology, you see, people know this if they had a near-death experience. There's a thing called connecting you. It's in the Bible. It's called the silver cord. And in fact, what you notice is if you die and go down the tunnel of light, there's a silver cord that looks like a neon cord. It's actually made from these astral particles that actually connects your physical body through the pineal gland and the basal nuclei directly to your spirit body, which is your mind or soul. This is reality. This is the way you are made, okay? And what they need to do is literally unplug it like a USB cord and plug it into something else. And that's what they're talking about, right? They're not just talking about making a simulated you by transferring your behaviors and your past information or knowledge into another creature. Because that's almost like the idea of beaming you. But in order to beam you, they have to completely consume or destroy you and just recreate a simulation of you in another place. What they want to do is actually transfer the consciousness of the soul from one avatar or body, whether it's genetically engineered or hybridized, to another body, and therefore you will literally, have endless life.
Yeah, this was initially announced by Pravda, which of course is a KGB propaganda arm, but the Russian newspaper Pravda announced that they would be able to transfer your soul, they put in quotes, essence into an E.B.E. or an electronic body that you could walk on the bottom of the ocean or onto another planet. When they announced this, they were saying that they had just moved into the ability to bring this about and would be able to transfer your soul via radio frequency waves, which, of course, when we start looking at things like Sura, HARP, or the IceGat facilities, we're looking at the possibility, if you guys remember, the IceGat was used to send a Doritos commercial off to Alpha Centauri. So we're talking about the possibility of transferring yourself into another solar system.
Yeah, that's pretty strange stuff, but people may find this far out, but the level of science and technology is eons ahead of anything that people can imagine, let alone understand. So we'll be back in a moment to the NutriMedical Report. I guess we've talked about this, Freeman. The real issue is, if you wanted to divide it, not on political or religious or other lines, it is the hivers and the non-hivers. The hivers are these, the best term would be the transdimensional Draco-reptilian serpents of hell, the Nephilim, who want to hive us all, just like the movie Star Trek, and the non-hivers want to reinforce the fact that we're created independent and autonomous spirit beings inhabiting or connected to fleshly bodies in the lower dimensional planes, working out and understanding the nature of what we are and our Creator. And the powers that be, the PTB, are all occultists that run every government, every religion, every organization, every university. Basically, the entire control matrix of even all education is run by these hivers, these beings that have invaded, in a sense, our world, just exactly like the Bible says, that they've come down to us. And woe to earth, and you see, for the devil and his minions have come down. The masters of the Lord of Chaos himself, Lucifer, the one who says he's the light bringer, in fact, brings darkness and control, and brings his version of order out of chaos, when the only order that can come out of chaos has to come from the higher spiritual realms and reflect the glory of the Creator God. And that's what the problem is, that people don't understand this. The religions don't understand it. They don't understand that our technology is getting to the point where Ray Kurzweil's idea of simulated transfer of human consciousness, of creating artificial cybernetic minds, of transhumanism, is very real. It's not just an Avatar movie that's an interesting 4D flick there on your big IMAX theater screens. These things are coming at us at an enormous pace. In fact, the government's called NIBC, Nano Information Biocogno Program 2020, which is only now 10 years away, plans to have cybernetic armies that are wired directly to battlefield matrices or transhuman warriors that you literally don't want to see, because these are right out of the bowels of hell. A female template with genetics transferred from animals, wired and covered with nanotech body armor, and their thoughts directly connected to actuating weapon systems, even from satellites or remote-operated drones. So people say they can't do it. Well, let's put it this way. Just wait, and you're going to find out the hard way.
That's very true, and I think we're getting very close to that point. I think World War III is imminent. What I'm looking at right now, and a lot of this goes back to William Bramley's book, The Gods of Eden, and he discusses the custodial gods, as they were, the Nephilim, and how their religions have spread throughout time, and how they are used to bind the soul to the body. and that is part of the method of what they are doing, is trying to convince the mind to agree that it is part of the body.